Hello everybody, you have tuned in to Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover virtually any aspect of making a murderer. I go over the evidence, the documents, the photos. So if you like, stay tuned, and in the future I'll have many more videos besides the one you're about to see. Okay, so just to recap from the last video, part 1. This is the sign that was found in Stephen's desk. When the desk was first found, you could not see any markings near any of the edges of this piece of paper. But after this Auto Trader magazine that you see there moved, which had a felt marker sitting right on top of it, okay? Once that moved, suddenly this appeared as if they pulled it out and it was on the end and that it had these markings on it, but it can't because part of the end was sticking out and there was no markings on the paper if you watch. So, as you watch this video, I really want to leave you with a couple of thoughts, some things to consider as you're watching the rest of it. Now, number 1, the sign that was just being talked about, that sign was found in Stephen Avery's desk in his living room. Okay, that's where it was found. Now, I think there's some suspicious things about it. Others also think there are suspicious things about it. Not everybody necessarily thinks there's suspicious things about it. So, it's one of those things that people agree to disagree on. But the fact of the matter is that that sign was found there. And the photographs were taken of it there. Okay? So, as we move through this video, we're going to hear from a gentleman, Mr. Paul Metz. Okay? Mr. Metz is going to tell us about a very vile-smelling fire that he, smelled on the night of November 1st, 2005. So, the interesting thing here, people, is that we have a report of a very foul-smelling fire up on Zander Road by Mr. Paul Metz. By the way, which is right next to 3302 Zander Road, which is the address that's on the for sale sign, or on the back of the for sale sign, along with Teresa Hallbach's phone number. So, this is very, very odd. If there was a sign on Stephen's living room desk that said 3302 Zander Road, and then we have a Mr. Metz calling in from within a quarter mile, a half a mile of that property on Zander Road, reporting a vile-smelling fire. And we only have like 3 pages in all of Queso about this. Where is the investigation? Seriously. You have your suspect, who you've claimed was your suspect because he was so guilty, with a sign that had that address and Teresa Hallbach's phone number in his desk. You get a report of a foul-smelling fire from very, very nearby that address, and there is virtually no investigation of it. So, that is the first thing we think about while we're watching this video. That's the first thing you got to ask yourself while I'm going through all this information. How does this not get investigated? Why does it not get investigated? Just head scratchers, but just think about that as you're listening to the information in this video. Now, in this video, there's going to be a lot of things talked about. I'm going to dispute Mr. Metz and which way he says that the wind was blowing. The way he states the wind is blowing and how it doesn't make sense the way that his cows ran away from the smoke doesn't make sense if the wind was blowing the way that he suggests. So you're going to see a lot of information here in this video, but the whole time you need to be asking yourself, how did this not get investigated? Why did it not get investigated? And also, you got to wonder, is there a reason why this didn't get reported? Because this is the only vile-smelling fire. This is only a count of a vile-smelling fire that we have anywhere around that period of, or October 31st to November 3rd of 2005. This is the only account we have. It's my belief that 3302 Zander Road is where the cremains were burnt. That's my opinion at this point, because that is the only place where we have an account of a fire that was vile smelling enough that it could have been that. That it would, because that was the one thing. Everybody talks about these fires at Avery Salvage or whatever. Got people that don't even live there talking about seeing the fires and how high they were and all that, but nobody reports a smell. How do you explain that? So, that's what we're basically looking at here. Moving into this video, those are just some of the things that I want you to be thinking about while all this information is coming out. So anyways, we'll move into it, and I'll jump back in here periodically before the end of the video. Mr. Metz, who I talked about in the first video. On 11/15/05, investigations received a note from Captain Rush indicating that he had received an overnight voicemail from Paul Metz. The note indicates that on that night of 11/1/05, he heard a big whoosh and thought it was a power company problem. On 11/18/05, I, Dettering, did leave a voicemail for Mr. Metz's machine and advised him to contact me on my cell phone. On 11/18 at 15:43 hours, I did receive a phone call from the following subject regarding this matter. Paul J. Metz. Metz indicated he has property of approximately 4 1/2 miles due north of Avery's auto salvage yard. He indicated that on 11/1/05 at approximately 17:30 hours, he had been feeding cattle on his property. He stated he heard a loud whoosh and indicated it reminded him of incidents where he had poured gasoline or other highly volatile substances onto a fire. Metz stated that approximately 10 minutes later he smelled something that was similar to wires burning. However, he indicated the smell was not that, but he was unable to describe it, but stated it was very vile smell. He stated the cows had gotten very spooked and he could not get the cows back under control and they had damaged fences. Metz stated he had been in contact with WPS that evening, which is the power company, and there were no problems with the power outages. He stated the wind was blowing out of the south or southwest, which I disagree with and which the weather in the area disagrees with at the time. He indicated his property is located at the intersection of Yambo Creek and Zander Road. He advised me he's usually at the property should I choose to speak with him further. Investigation continues. Okay, so real quick here, just want to say a few things. Mr. Metz is trying to say that the wind was coming from the south or the southwest. Basically blowing into the north or the northeast, right? Okay. Number one, Avery Salvage is due south from him. I mean, straight south. Dead on almost. Maybe 1/16 of a mile west. But literally almost due south. Okay, so also Avery Salvage is 4.5 miles away, and you're gonna see here that Mr. Metz clearly tries to assert that this smoke and stuff came from Avery Salvage. Okay, so just wanted to point that out. Now we move into the actual interview of Mr. Metz, where they actually go and meet with him. So on Sunday, 11/20/05 at 14:51 hours, I, Dettering, did meet with Paul Metz, previously mentioned in this report, and at his property just west of the intersection of Yambo Creek Road and Zander Road. I had spoken with Metz by telephone about the whoosh from the area of the Avery property. He states that as the crow flies, his property is approximately 4.5 miles from the Averys, and he heard a whoosh. I asked him how he is certain that he heard the whoosh on 11/1/05. He stated he was positive it was 11/1/05 as it was the day after Halloween. Metz indicated between 1700 and 1800 hours, all of his cattle were lined up along a fence line at the southern edge of his property near the road. He stated the air was really heavy that day and that there was a breeze out of the south. He stated he heard a whoosh off in the distance and after a few minutes smelled an odor similar to burning wires. He stated he is self-employed as a commercial electrician and is familiar with burning wires. He stated while the odor was similar to burning wires, it was something different than burning wires. He stated he began to detect the odor of very faintly approximately 5 minutes after the whoosh. He stated his cattle were bothered by the smell to the point of knocking down fences in order to try and get away. He stated He did not see any actual smoke due to the fact that it was dark or almost dark. Metz stated he got in his four-wheeler in an attempt to get his cattle back under control. He stated he got close to Zander Road, traveling east from his property, and the smell got stronger. Metz stated he subsequently had a relative contact with Kewaunee nuclear plant, but learned they were not online at all that day. He stated WPS was also called within 1 hour of the odor being detected. However, they reported no outage in the area. He stated WPS was actually contacted by his uncle. Anyways, at 2:55 p.m., Paul Metz did provide me with the following written statement. Okay, so skipping a little bit here to the top of this page, I smelled something like wires burning. At this point, all of the cattle ran to the northeast of the property, going through the fences and knocking down the fences at the northeast edge of the property. I just want to point that out. I think it's important, especially when I get to talking about wind direction that day and stuff here. What the Weather Service says that contradicts with what he says, along with the statement about the cattle. Anyways, so, and along with wind speed too. So this statement is signed by Paul J. Metz. He cleared, Dettering cleared the Metz property to 1511 hours. He then, instead of heading east on Zander Road, which is where he said the smell was getting stronger. Metz said the smell was getting stronger when he was on his golf cart or whatever. He doesn't. He goes 0.2 miles east on Zander and then makes a right onto Yambo Creek Road and goes south to straight to the Avery property. The Avery property was 4.5 miles away from that property. Okay, so you see Mr. Metz there trying to point towards Avery Salvage. Okay, so now what you're going to see what the direction that Mr. Metz felt that the wind was going. We're going to find out what direction that the Weather Service says the wind was going, and then we're going to just kind of analyze it a bit and analyze his statements. Where his cows, were going, where in fact would have been the clearer air for the cows on the property, and that sort of stuff here. Now, keep in mind, this is all just me doing what little investigation I can because it wasn't done. Okay, this is me just collecting and throwing up what I can see as odd, because obviously, like I said, what is it, like 3 pages in queso that even like reference this? So that's all this is, folks. This is just me going through the information that I've been able to collect about this and pointing out everything that I just think is so odd about it. So here we go. We'll start moving into wind speeds and wind directions and the cows and all that stuff. Here we see an image of Paul Metz's property at 2530 West Zander Road. Okay. You see what this is saying here. It's talking about what the weather report is for that day and what was really happening there according to the Weather Service. That there was a wind speed of 8 miles an hour. Okay? 8 miles an hour. Okay? That means it would have taken at least 50 minutes or so for the smell to travel from Avery Salvage to this property, about 4.5 miles. I mean, it would have taken a lot longer than 5 or 10 minutes. And and seriously, dude, there's no way he's hearing the whoosh from 4.5 miles away. I mean, it's kind of absurd that he made this claim, and I think maybe that's why Kratz didn't even want to touch this evidence. But that's speculation. But I mean, it is kind of ridiculous claim that he's making. So, I mean, I just seriously doubt you could hear a whoosh like that from 4.5 miles away. So, anyways, so we also see that the wind was blowing from a west in a northern direction to the southeast. Okay, so that smell is not traveling 4.5 miles in 5 to 10 minutes. Number one, not with an 8 mile an hour wind speed. Okay. Especially if it's not blowing from the south, but we'll put that aside. With an 8 mile an hour wind speed, there's no way that smell is traveling 4.5 miles in 5 or 10 minutes. It's just not. That's not. The laws of physics deny Mr. Metz on that one. So, guess from where a smell could have gotten to him that quickly. 3302 Zander. That's right. It's right next to him. You're going to see here, I'm going to be showing you some Google Earth images of this. You're going to see how close these two properties are and how this guy thinks that he heard a whoosh from 4.5 miles away when he probably heard the whoosh from right next to him. It's what makes the most sense. It's the logical, deduction. So, what is Zander Road? What is it? What is the significance of it? Who knows? I don't know. I really don't. What was going on? Why was it not investigated? That's such a big question. Why would they not have investigated something that would seem so obvious? Now, granted, they didn't know about the foul-smelling fire when they found the sign in Stephen's desk. But they had to have found out that was Teresa's phone number eventually, and that must have, pricked their, awareness and made them go, wow, Teresa's phone number's on there? Okay. And then 3302 Zander Road, right? And then when they get a call from Mr. Metz on the 18th, saying he was on Zander Road and he smelled a vile smelling fire. Ding, 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 ding. Light bulbs should have been going off. Sirens should have been going off. Oh yeah, what about that sign? But that didn't happen. I'm left wondering why. Why didn't it happen? Okay? That's really my main thing here is you have something that would seem to point so clearly, and then you have a vile smelling fire in that same place. What if it just happens to be the site of, wherever the original killer maybe took her, or something like that, or maybe this was a site after Teresa was found, that this was a site that they were setting up and planning to put, to have that sign somewhere in Stephen's trailer to point to 3302 Zander Road, and therefore the sign in his desk would then point to 3302 Zander Road, where all the evidence would have been, and then that would have incriminated him. So I'm not saying that is what happened here, but what I'm saying is that it's damn odd that it didn't get investigated, and so it leads you to believe what were they afraid of? What was wrong? Why were they not investigating this lead? So, that's basically all I'm pointing out here. So we're going to get into some Google Earth images here. You're going to see how close these two properties are. You're also going to find out the reason why this property would have been a prime property for them to set up as a planting, as a place to plant, because it was unoccupied. There was nobody there. It was perfect for them to be able to move with very little questions and conduct whatever business they were conducting with very little questions, especially when you see the size of the property here. They had a lot of operating room, and there's a few reasons why. Okay, maybe it was a planting property, and then when you add that maybe this was a setup, and then maybe that's what that statement means that they make on Saturday morning, the morning right before the RAV4 is found. You hear them, there's that call to dispatch, or there's those deputies talking, it's Mark Wiegert telling somebody from Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department that there's been a change of plans, and maybe this was it. Maybe they had originally set up this site and have a sign point to it to frame Stephen, or maybe when Stephen decided to leave and go to Crivets and be in Crivets for the weekend, maybe that's when they decided, oh wait guys, hey, why don't we just move it right onto his doorstep since there's nobody there? Why don't we just move it right on that? That's really incriminating, right? So it's a possibility. Just throwing it out there, because it would explain why they didn't want to investigate it. So, anyways, we'll move into the next bit now about the property being unoccupied. We'll let you see all the Google Earth images, and you can check this out for yourself. This is the record that it was sold on March 31st of 2006. Brendan's confession, they got everything they needed. Brendan's confession, which they felt helped them seal the deal with all the whole case with Teresa Hallback, you know, the death of Teresa Hallback and Avery as the culprit. They felt like they had it all wrapped up. So, hey, by March 31st, they didn't need this property anymore. So whoever could just go sell it or whatever. I mean, so, but whether you think it's significant or not, the fact of the matter is, yes, the property was unoccupied up until March 31st of 2006. Okay, just to reiterate here. So, Mr. Metz claims that the wind was coming from this direction. Okay, I just want to say that. Look at the way it's going across his property. This is the northeastern edge of his property right here. Okay, and he's claiming that the wind was coming like this. Okay, in a south, in an east, you know, or I'm sorry, in the north and an east direction, or from the southwest. So, if that's true, why are the cows going here? The smell would have been better here if it was blowing from the south, if it was blowing in the way that he's suggesting. So it makes no sense that they would have gone here instead of here, because the smell would have been dissipating here quicker than it would have here. So just wanted to point that out. So that's why I have so much trouble with his statement about it being from the southwest. And also the Weather Service says it was blowing in this direction. Okay? Now that makes sense, because it would be blowing in a direction to blow it down and away from this edge of the property. The wind would be coming like this. Right? So this would be the furthest point from the west, and it would be the closest point to the north, which was, you know, if you go the north, it was clear. If you know, or clearer, I should say, because if the wind was blowing this way, it was going to be blowing the smell or whatever and everything in a direction like this. So it would dissipate on this edge quicker. So just wanted to point that out. That's why his statement doesn't really make much sense, and it makes more sense that he heard a whoosh or something from over in this direction, maybe about within a mile or 1.5 miles. Okay, folks, so this is it. That there where the mouse is, that's 3302 Zander Road. You can see it's pretty much far away from anything and, you know, secluded. Now where the mouse is, that's Paul Metz's property. Okay? So they are literally right next to each other. There's just a significantly thick wood in between the two of them. So yeah, this is really makes more sense that the fire came from right here. That the smell came from right here. So this is the spot, you know, this obviously that's Paul Metz's property over there, but on the left there you can see that is obviously probably where the smell was coming from. It's, you know, it makes the most sense because the wind was coming from that direction according to the Weather Service. I don't really believe Mr. Metz and his assessment of the wind direction that day. But I do believe his cows freaked out. I do believe he smelled something. And I believe he heard a whoosh. I just don't believe he heard that whoosh from 4.5 miles away. Okay, folks, so that's about it here from Zander Road. All I can say is it's fishy. There's something really, really strange about why they didn't investigate, how this didn't get investigated. Their prime suspect has something in his desk that points right to it. Somebody close to it ends up reporting a very vile smelling fire. And we got nothing. We got nothing. So that's the big takeaway here, folks. In my opinion, the big takeaway here is the fact that it wasn't investigated. They're so sure Avery is guilty, but yet they don't investigate that lead. From what we can see, warranted at least more investigation, right? Where is it? Yeah. So that's it, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you next time. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe.